What's going on, guys? I'm here with Dr. Layne Norton, and he's just finished up his presentation at the Ultimate Evidence-Based Conference, and we were talking about busting broscience, how to crush a charlatan, and everything in between. So tell us why science is important.
Science is what is.
It's the answer.
It's what the truth. You know, I think that I was just having this conversation with James, and people get it confused because they think studies say different things and whatnot, that they don't want to pay attention to science. But the reality is that science is perfect. It's that people have to do science, and people screw it up.
Yeah. Right.
So people misinterpret data, or the study design isn't perfect, or the execution isn't perfect, or you can't. Especially when you deal with human subjects, you can't make them do everything you want them to do, so things are imperfect, but it is a perfect system of analysis. If we could somehow be perfect people, we would have much more understanding of the human bodies, but we fuck it up a little bit here.
And we're getting there. We're getting closer.
We're getting closer.
And something I wanted to ask you was, what would be your key tips from your presentation to those who weren't able to attend this weekend on how to identify somebody who is misappropriately using the science, dogma, hyperbole rather, superlatives, all those kind of things. How do you identify it?
Yeah, some of the easy ways are, like I talked about, I said, if somebody never says the 3 magic words, I don't know, then they're probably full of it. If somebody is using words like best, worst, always, never, and applying those blanketly, they're probably full of it. Or people who are trying to only, whatever ailment, disease, or goal you have, this, every time, this, it's really arrogant to think that way because, metabolism is so complicated. My BS taught me everything I didn't know. Yep. And then my PhD showed me a lot more of what I didn't know, so, and then being around these guys, you just got so much brain power. I'm a very average intelligence. I was fortunate enough to be around really smart people and learn from really smart people, and I was grateful enough to integrate that knowledge and as loud as I am, shut the hell up and learn.
Yeah.
But, even these guys, we don't know. Yeah. There's so much stuff we don't know. But I think that is a very humbling experience, and people don't like that idea because if there's things we don't know, we don't have all the answers. But that's a beautiful thing. Being wrong is a beautiful thing. If you're wrong about something, that means you have room for improvement. That means you weren't doing everything you possibly could right, which is a beautiful thing. If you're already right and you're doing everything you can, that means this is as good as it's going to get. Yeah. Right? So why try to get better? So I tell people, I'm like, the best thing in the world that can happen is I'm wrong about something, because then it means I can get better.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the other things I wanted to ask you about was you spoke about how, some people use science incorrectly or have, ways of arguing against science, such as, n equals 1.
Yeah, worked for me, bro.
Yeah, worked for me, all of those sorts of things. Do you want to give a rundown of, what some of the arguments against science are and why they're incorrect?
Well, again, some of the people will say things like, well, this study says this and this study says that, and so I just don't trust science. Well, if you understand research and you actually try to break it down, you look at it. Normally, when you look at study design, you can explain away why things had differential outcomes, and a lot of studies are underpowered as well. When James talked about that. Yep. You've only got 8 people in a study, it's very difficult to show differences. There's I've done analysis of some of our data where we thought we could have seen a significant difference, but we just didn't have the power. We call that a power number. We would have needed 100 subjects to show a significant difference. But that still might mean there's a physiological difference. So a lot of it is imperfect study design and also imperfect interpretation of those studies. Some scientists don't even get their own conclusions right based on their own data. I've read studies where I've looked at the data and then I've looked at the conclusion of the authors and I said, that's not what your data said at all. So it's, again, science is not imperfect. People are imperfect, right? And I think saying because some of us get it wrong sometimes to not even trust science, I mean, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I think that doesn't make any sense.
And question for you, where have you gone wrong with science over the course of your career? Has there been any moments where you're like, ah, shit, I fucked that up, you know, and change your mind and, you know?
Yeah, all the time. You know, I used to be a big advocate of more frequent meals to maximize anabolism, and now based on the research, at minimum, it's not any better than, you know, like 3 to 4 meals a day is not any better than, 8 meals a day is not any better than 3 to 4, and at worst, it's probably not as good in terms of anabolism. So I think that, you know, that was one thing that I changed my mind on. And then cardio, at first I was do fasted cardio, slow, then I was, nope, do all HIIT, fed, and now I'm kind of like back in the center a little bit. So, you know, I've changed my thoughts on many, many things. I used to also recommend people who were, you know, carb sensitive, insulin resistant, even though they never got tested. You know, higher fat, lower carb, higher protein, and now I've said, well, higher protein maybe, but it doesn't really seem to make a difference, fat versus carb. The only difference it seems to make is in terms of adherence. So whatever you can adhere to, better.
Preference, Awesome. And final question. Your PhD, you mentioned a couple of times through your presentation that, you know, people had almost, you know, dissed your PhD and, you know, weren't giving it the credit that it deserved. What would your response be to those people, and why?
You should go do one. It was easy.
I don't want to do one. That's why you're doing one.
Well, whoever said that, you should go do one. It's easy. And in fact, I got paid for mine. So I had a fellowship. I got paid for mine. Do
you want to explain what the PhD was? Because I'm sure some people wouldn't even know.
So a PhD is not sitting in class. I mean, it is sitting in class partially, but it's doing your own original research and having that research published and scrutinized by peers of scientists. And that is an extraordinarily humbling and
brutal process.
Soul-sucking process. And very few people make it out of that anyway, and very few people make it out without being humbled and understand they don't know everything in the world. So I think, you should do one.
And what was yours about? You had rats, you fed them for 11 weeks?
Well, there was several different studies, but basically we focused on different outcomes of protein synthesis and looking at like protein sources and amount and frequency of feedings and trying to determine a more optimal protein level.
Yeah, and you found that leucine.
Leucine is the amino acid that seems to be regulatory for increasing muscle protein synthesis even in complete protein sources and whole meals. So, we emphasize focusing on leucine-rich sources of protein, which are your animal proteins. They tend to be a little bit better, but there are some relatively good sources of vegan proteins like rice protein that have a decent level of leucine in them. So, and that's what we say, you know, that it's not just the amount of protein, but also the protein source that matters. And
it's fair to say that what you found back then still holds up today, and that was how many years ago now?
About 7 years ago when we published, and
there's been a lot of evidence since then that is,
most everything is supported what we said.
Yeah, very cool. Guys, thank you, Dr. Layne Norton. If you're not following Layne, make sure you do. Most of you are probably already following him. That's why I wanted to get him here today and to talk a little bit more about his presentation and work. So make sure you check him out, biolayne.com. That's right, isn't it?
That's it.
Beautiful, I got it in one. And at BioLayne on IG, YouTube. He's everywhere. He's the man. Thank you, Layne.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time, man.
I think my girlfriend was